Get out! You don't belong here! The sharp accusation sets the stage for a gripping showdown where a black CEO, a titan of industry, faces a storm of prejudice at an exclusive poolside. Misjudged as an intruder, she endures biting insults, baseless suspicion, and a crowd's hasty judgment, all for daring to enjoy a quiet moment with her book. Yet her unyielding grace and razor-sharp wit hint at a reckoning that will turn the tables in ways no one expects. Will justice prevail, or will bias triumph? Stick around to uncover the truth. We'd love for you to subscribe to catch our latest stories and share where you're tuning in from. Your city, your corner of the world. What secrets will this clash reveal? Join us to find out, and let's spark a conversation about courage and change. The late afternoon sun draped azure heights in a golden haze, its rays dancing across the infinity pool that seemed to spill into the horizon. Nestled in the lush outskirts of Miami, Florida, this upscale residential complex was a haven of opulence, where tropical gardens whispered secrets to the breeze and the air carried the faint tang of salt water. At the heart of this paradise, Aisha Johnson reclined on a cushioned lounge chair, her presence a quiet symphony of grace amid the gentle hum of summer. Aisha, a 35-year-old woman of striking poise, was a vision in her two-piece bikini, its tropical leaf pattern, vibrant green against a crisp white canvas, evoking the cool shade of a rainforest. The halter-style top, with its crisscross design, hugged her curves with an effortless elegance, accentuating her form while the adjustable neckties fluttered lightly in the breeze. The high-waisted bottoms, classic yet chic, smoothed over her lower abdomen, offering a nod to vintage glamour while radiating modern confidence. Crafted from stretchy swimwear fabric, the suit clung comfortably, allowing her to shift with ease as she turned the pages of Dare, to lead by Brené Brown, her gold-rimmed reading glasses catching the sunlight. At her feet, Milo, her corgi companion, sprawled contentedly, his fluffy fur glowing like a patch of sunlight on the travertine tiles. His ears twitched occasionally, attuned to the distant giggles of children splashing in the kiddie pool or the soft clink of a maintenance worker's tools near the garden. Aisha's wireless earbuds, nestled discreetly, played a soft jazz melody, the notes weaving a cocoon of calm around her. She was a woman at peace, her dark eyes scanning the book with quiet intensity, her lips curving into a faint smile at a particularly resonant passage. Around her, azure heights pulsed with understated life. A young couple lounged nearby, their iced coffees sweating in the heat, while a group of kids chased each other with inflatable floats, their laughter rising like bubbles. Mrs. Henderson, a retiree from the 14th floor, peered over her romance novel, her oversized sun hat casting a shadow across her chair. A maintenance worker, his shirt emblazoned with the Azure Heights logo, polished the glass railing with rhythmic precision. The scene was idyllic, a snapshot of privilege and leisure, yet beneath the surface, an unspoken hierarchy simmered, a world where belonging was often measured by appearances. Aisha, oblivious to the occasional glances cast her way, turned another page. Her presence was magnetic, yet unassuming, her deep brown skin glowing under the sun's caress. To the casual observer, she was simply a woman enjoying a summer afternoon, her bikini a bold yet tasteful statement of confidence. But to those who noticed the absence of flashy jewelry or a designer tote, she was an enigma, a figure who didn't quite fit the mold of Azure Heights' typical high-rise elite. A few residents whispered, their words masked by the pool's gentle lapping, wondering who she might be. A guest? A renter? The assumptions lingered, unspoken but heavy, like the humid air. Milo stirred, lifting his head to sniff the breeze, his stubby tail giving a lazy wag. Aisha reached down, her fingers brushing his soft fur, her touch grounding them both in the moment. She adjusted her glasses, her movements deliberate, as if savoring the simplicity of the stolen hour. The jazz in her earbuds swelled, a saxophone riff that felt like a warm embrace, and she sank deeper into her book, underlining a sentence with a pencil tucked behind her ear. Leadership, Brown wrote, was about courage and vulnerability, a truth Aisha knew intimately, though no one here could guess the battles she'd fought to claim her place in the world. The sun dipped slightly, casting long shadows across the pool deck, and the air grew thick with the promise of evening. Aisha's solitude was a quiet rebellion, a refusal to be anything but herself in a space that demanded conformity. She was unaware of the storm brewing just beyond her line of sight, the footsteps that would soon shatter this fragile peace. For now she was simply Aisha, reader, dreamer, woman by the pool, her heart beating in rhythm with the world she'd carved for herself. As Milo yawned, his pink tongue curling, Aisha smiled, her eyes lingering on the horizon where the pool seemed to meet the sky. This was her sanctuary, a moment of stillness before the world would demand more of her. And though she couldn't know it, this fleeting calm was the calm before a reckoning, a story that would unfold not in the pages of her book, but in the hearts of those who dared to judge her. The poolside air was thick with the languid warmth of late afternoon, the gentle lapping of water, and the soft hum of jazz in Aisha's earbuds creating a cocoon of calm. She turned a page and dared to lead, her pencil hovering over a line about the courage to stand alone, when a sharp, staccato rhythm pierced the tranquility, heels clicking against the travertine tiles like a metronome set to judgment. Karen Williams, the self-appointed sentinel of community standards, strode forward, her presence a storm cloud eclipsing the sun. Clutching a clipboard like a scepter, she moved with the purpose of someone who thrived on control, her posture rigid with authority. At her side, James Carter, a young security guard, trailed hesitantly, his hand twitching toward the walkie-talkie clipped to his belt, his cap slightly askew as if apologizing for his presence. Aisha sensed the shift before she saw them, the subtle hush of nearby conversations signaling trouble. She slipped one earbud out, the jazz fading to a faint murmur, and lowered her book, her eyes lifting to meet the approaching duo. Karen stopped 3 feet away, her shadow falling across Aisha's lounge chair like a challenge. The clipboard tilted forward, a silent accusation, as Karen's voice cut through the air, crisp and devoid of warmth. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, the word ma'am dripping with condescension. "This pool is for residents only. I'm going to need to see your access card and ID." The words landed like a stone in still water, ripples of tension spreading outward. Aisha's expression remained serene, her lips parting in a polite smile, though her eyes held a glint of quiet assessment. "I'm a resident," she said simply, her voice steady, carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to navigating skepticism. Milo, her corgi, lifted his head from the tiles, his ears perking at the change in tone, a low huff escaping his snout as if sensing the brewing conflict. Karen's lips pursed, her pen tapping an impatient rhythm against the clipboard. "A resident," she repeated, her tone laced with disbelief. "Of which unit, exactly? The service apartments on the east side?" The implication was clear, a thinly veiled jab that Aisha didn't belong among the high-rise elite. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes scanning Aisha with the scrutiny of a gatekeeper guarding a sacred threshold. "I've been chair of the Community Standards Committee for 5 years, and I've never seen you here before." Aisha tilted her head, her smile unwavering, though a flicker of amusement danced in her gaze. "I live here," she said, her words measured, neither defensive nor confrontational, but firm, like a cornerstone unmoved by a storm. She set her book down on the side table, the spine aligned with deliberate care, and folded her hands in her lap, exuding a quiet confidence that seemed to unsettle Karen further. James cleared his throat, stepping forward, his voice tinged with the practiced authority of someone clinging to protocol. "Ma'am's right," he said, glancing at Karen for approval. "There's a new policy, 48-hour pre-registration for pool access via the resident app. I don't see your name on today's list." His fingers fumbled with his tablet, scrolling through a digital roster, his brow furrowing as he failed to find her name. "I'm sorry, but I'll need some identification to confirm." Isha's eyebrows lifted slightly, a hint of curiosity softening her features. "A new policy?" she asked, her tone genuinely inquisitive, as if inviting them to explain rather than challenging their authority. "Could you point me to where it's posted? I must have missed it." The question was simple, almost innocuous, but it landed like a pebble in a gear, halting Karen's momentum. The clipboard rose like a shield and Karen's pen paused mid-tap, her confidence wavering for a fraction of a second. "It's in the app," Karen snapped, her voice climbing half an octave. "And on the bulletin board in the lobby. It's been there for weeks. This is a high-end community, and we have standards to maintain. Not just anyone can waltz in here and use the amenities." Her words were sharp, each syllable a barb aimed at Aisha's perceived audacity. The accusation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken assumptions, and the poolside chatter faded to whispers as nearby residents turned to watch. Milo let out a soft growl, his stubby legs tensing as he sat up, his eyes fixed on Karen. Aisha placed a calming hand on his head, her touch gentle but firm, and he settled back down, though his ears remained alert. "I understand the need for rules," Aisha said, her voice still level, her gaze steady. "Community standards are important, but I'm a resident, and I'd appreciate it if you could clarify which specific bylaw requires this registration." Her words were polite, almost deferential, but they carried a quiet weight, like a chess move that forced her opponent to rethink their strategy. Karen's face flushed, her fingers tightening around the clipboard as she flipped through its pages, searching for an answer she didn't have. It's It's clearly stated in the recent updates," she stammered, her authority fraying at the edges. "James, isn't it?" She turned to the security guard, her eyes demanding support. But James was already scrolling through his tablet again, his confidence faltering as he failed to locate the precise regulation. "It's in the bylaws," he mumbled, his voice barely audible, his cap slipping further as he ducked his head. The crowd grew, drawn by the unfolding drama like moths to a flame. Mrs. Henderson lowered her romance novel, her sun hat tilting as she leaned forward. The young couple with their iced coffees exchanged glances, their whispers barely concealed. A maintenance worker paused his polishing, his rag dangling forgotten in his hand. Aisha remained the eye of the storm, her composure unshaken, her hands still folded calmly in her lap. She watched Karen and James with the patience of someone who had faced such scrutiny before, her silence more powerful than any retort. Karen, sensing the shift in attention, straightened her spine, her voice regaining its edge. "Look," she said, pointing her pen at Aisha, "this pool is for residents who follow the rules, who contribute to this community's lifestyle. If you can't provide proof of residency, I'll have to ask you to leave." Her words were a gauntlet thrown down, a challenge meant to assert her dominance. James nodded, his hand hovering near his walkie-talkie, ready to call for backup, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Aisha's smile widened slightly, a glimmer of steel beneath her calm exterior. "I'd be happy to clarify my residency," she said, her voice as smooth as the pool's surface. "Perhaps you could show me the exact rule first, so we're all on the same page." The request was reasonable, almost conciliatory, but it landed like a spark in dry grass, igniting a flicker of uncertainty in Karen's eyes. The crowd leaned in, their whispers growing softer, the air taut with anticipation. Milo huffed again, his tail thumping once against the tiles, as if sensing the weight of the moment. Aisha's gaze never wavered, her presence a quiet force that seemed to fill the space around her. Karen's clipboard trembled slightly, her pen poised but still, as if the rules she wielded so confidently were suddenly slipping through her fingers. The sun continued its slow descent, casting long shadows across the deck. But for now, the stage was set, the players locked in a silent standoff, with Aisha's calm defiance holding the scene together like a thread ready to snap. Karen's pen jabbed at the air, punctuating her words with a staccato rhythm. "If you're a resident, as you claim," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "then surely you're aware of the community bylaws. The pool registration policy is non-negotiable. No exceptions." Her eyes glinted with the certainty of someone accustomed to unchallenged power, her clipboard raised like a shield against Aisha's unwavering calm. "You're disrupting the experience for everyone here," she added, her tone accusing, as if Aisha's mere presence were an affront to the community's sanctity. Aisha tilted her head slightly, her smile as steady as a lighthouse in a storm. "I'd like to see the specific bylaw you're referencing," she said, her voice soft but unyielding, each word a measured step in a dance of defiance. "If it's as clear as you say, it should be easy to point out." The request was polite, almost deferential, but it landed like a gauntlet, exposing the cracks in Karen's armor. The crowd, now swelling with curious onlookers, shifted closer, their whispers growing bolder, their eyes darting between Aisha's serene composure and Karen's mounting frustration. James fumbled with his tablet, his fingers swiping frantically as he searched for the elusive regulation. It's, uh, it's in the resident portal, he stammered, his voice betraying a flicker of doubt. Section, something about amenities access. Hang on. His cap slipped slightly and he adjusted it with a nervous twitch, his gaze flicking to Karen for guidance. But Karen's attention was fixed on Aisha, her lips tightening into a thin line as she flipped through her clipboard, the pages rustling with her impatience. It's there, she snapped, though her voice wavered, betraying the absence of the precise rules she claimed to wield. The crowd grew denser, a mosaic of curiosity and judgment. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, her romance novel forgotten, her sun hat tilting as she whispered to the couple with iced coffees, their heads nodding in eager agreement. The Garcia brothers, pausing their game of pool volleyball, hovered at the edge, their wet towels dripping onto the tiles. A maintenance worker, his polishing rag still in hand, lingered near the equipment shed, his eyes wide with the thrill of unfolding drama. And then there was Emily Davis, her phone raised like a reporter's camera, capturing every moment for the community's Facebook group. Unidentified woman at the pool, possible trespasser, her caption read, the words already sparking likes and comments from residents scrolling in their high-rise apartments. Isha remained the eye of the storm, her posture relaxed yet commanding, her hands still folded as if anchoring herself against the rising tide of scrutiny. I understand the importance of rules, she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs with a clarity that silenced the crowd for a moment. But I'm a resident, and I'm entitled to use this pool. If there's a new policy, I'd appreciate seeing it in writing. Her words were a masterclass in restraint, each syllable laced with a quiet authority that seemed to unnerve Karen further. Karen's face flushed, her pen now tapping a frantic rhythm against the clipboard. This isn't about you, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise, her words sharp with accusation. This is about maintaining standards. Residents expect a certain level of decorum. The pause before decorum was deliberate, a veiled jab that hung in the air like a sour note. The crowd's whispers swelled, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting to Aisha's unflinching calm. Milo let out a low growl, his small frame bristling as he sensed the hostility. Aisha reached down, her fingers brushing his fur with a soothing touch, and he quieted, though his eyes remained fixed on Karen. I'm happy to comply with any legitimate rule, Aisha said, her voice as smooth as polished stone. But I'd like to understand the policy you're enforcing. Could you or James show me the exact section in the bylaws? The question was a mirror, reflecting Karen's authority in her, revealing its fragility. James scrolled faster, his tablet screen a blur as he muttered, It's gotta be here somewhere. His voice cracked slightly, the weight of the crowd's attention pressing down on him. Karen, sensing the moment slipping, stepped closer, her clipboard now a prop in her performance of power. The specifics don't matter, she declared, her voice rising to reclaim control. What matters is that you're not on the list and you're making people uncomfortable. She gestured to the crowd as if their presence validated her claim, though several onlookers averted their eyes, caught in the crossfire of her accusation. Emily's phone zoomed in, the video streaming live to the group's page, comments piling up. Who is she? Why is Karen so worked up? This is getting out of hand. The Garcia brothers whispered to each other, one shaking his head, the other stifling a laugh. Mrs. Henderson clutched her novel tighter, her lips pursed in disapproval, though it was unclear whether she sided with Karen or was simply scandalized by the scene. The maintenance worker edged closer, his rag now twisted in his hands, his curiosity outweighing his duties. Aisha's smile didn't falter, though a spark of resolve flickered in her eyes, subtle as a candle in a storm. Uncomfortable, she repeated, her tone light but pointed, like a fencer testing an opponent's guard. I'm sitting here, reading a book, enjoying the amenities I'm entitled to. If that's making people uncomfortable, Perhaps we should discuss what community means here. Her words were a quiet thunderclap, reverberating through the crowd, forcing some to look away, others to lean in, their whispers now tinged with uncertainty. Karen's grip on the clipboard tightened, her knuckles whitening as she struggled to maintain her composure. "This isn't a debate," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. "If you can't provide proof of residency right now, I'll have James escort you out." She turned to the security guard, her eyes demanding action, but James hesitated, his hand hovering over his walkie-talkie, his gaze darting between Aisha's calm defiance and Karen's escalating agitation. "Ma'am," James said, his voice softer now, almost apologetic, "if you could just show us some ID, we can clear this up." His plea was earnest, a young man caught in a role he hadn't chosen, his cap slipping further as he shifted his weight. Aisha nodded, her expression still serene, as if she were navigating a boardroom rather than a poolside standoff. "I'd be glad to resolve this," she said, her voice a lifeline in the tense air. "But first I'd like to see the rule you're enforcing. That seems fair, doesn't it?" The question hung like a blade, sharp and unyielding, cutting through Karen's bravado. The crowd held its breath, their eyes locked on Aisha, whose calm presence seemed to anchor the chaos around her. Milo's tail thumped once, a quiet drumbeat of loyalty, as the tension coiled tighter, the standoff teetering on the edge of something explosive. Karen's pen froze, her clipboard trembling slightly, as the weight of Aisha's words pressed down, a challenge she hadn't anticipated. Karen's pen jabbed the air, her voice slicing through the hush with brittle insistence. "This isn't a negotiation," she declared, her tone sharp as a blade, each word an attempt to reclaim control. "You've been asked for proof of residency. If you can't provide it, you're leaving. Now." Her clipboard tilted forward, a silent ultimatum, as her eyes bored into Aisha, demanding compliance. The accusation hung heavy, a verdict delivered without trial, and the crowd's whispers surged, some nodding in approval, others shifting uneasily, caught in the crossfire of her certainty. Aisha's smile remained steady, a beacon of composure in the storm of scrutiny. "I've said I'm a resident," she replied, her voice smooth and unhurried, each syllable a deliberate counterpoint to Karen's escalating agitation. "If there's a rule I've missed, I'd like to see it. That's reasonable, isn't it?" Her words were a velvet glove over a steel fist, polite yet unyielding, turning Karen's demands back on her like a mirror reflecting a flaw. Milo's growl deepened, his small frame tensing as he sensed the hostility, his loyalty a quiet force at Aisha's side. James shifted his weight, his fingers fumbling over his tablet, the screen casting a faint glow on his anxious face. "It's, in the resident portal," he mumbled, his voice cracking under the weight of the crowd's attention. "Section Amenities Access, I think." His words trailed off, his confidence crumbling as he scrolled fruitlessly, the elusive bylaw nowhere to be found. He glanced at Karen, seeking rescue, but she was too consumed by her indignation to notice, her pen now tapping a frantic rhythm against the clipboard, each tap a pulse of her unraveling control. The crowd grew bolder, their murmurs coalescing into a chorus of speculation. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, her romance novel clutched like a shield, her lips pursed in disapproval. The Garcia brothers exchanged hushed words, their damp towels forgotten as they watched the drama unfold. Emily Davis, her phone raised high, continued her live stream, the comments on her video piling up with hashtags like "Brilliant Pool Intruder" and "Karen Strikes Again." "This woman's causing a scene," Emily narrated, her voice tinged with performative outrage, her lens zooming in on Aisha's serene defiance. Aisha leaned back slightly, her hands still folded, her gaze steady as it met Karen's. "If the rule's in the portal, perhaps you could show it to me," she said, her tone light but pointed, like a fencer testing an opponent's guard. "I'd hate to think this is a misunderstanding based on an assumption." The word assumption landed like a spark, igniting a ripple of unease through the crowd. Some onlookers averted their eyes, their discomfort palpable, while others leaned in, drawn by the quiet power in Aisha's voice. Karen's face reddened, her clipboard trembling as she flipped through its pages with desperate urgency. The rule is clear, she snapped, though her voice betrayed a flicker of doubt. Residents must register 48 hours in advance. It's to prevent overcrowding and ensure safety. You're not on the list, so you're not supposed to be here. Her words were a barrage, each one an attempt to drown out Aisha's calm insistence, but they faltered against the wall of her composure. Milo's growl grew louder, his stubby legs bracing as he stared at Karen, his small form a quiet ally in the escalating fray. Aisha reached down, her fingers brushing his fur with a soothing touch, calming his agitation without breaking her focus. I appreciate your dedication to safety, she said, her voice a steady current beneath the storm. But if I'm not on the list, it might be an oversight. Could we check with someone who has access to the full resident database? Her suggestion was reasonable, almost conciliatory, but it carried a weight that made Karen's clipboard seem flimsy by comparison. James hesitated, his hand hovering over his walkie-talkie, his eyes darting between Aisha and Karen. I can call the office, he offered, his voice tentative, as if stepping into a minefield. Karen shot him a glare, her authority slipping like sand through her fingers. There's no need for that, she said sharply, her tone a whip cracking through the air. This woman is not following protocol. We don't need to waste management's time. Her words were a desperate bid to maintain control, but they only deepened the crowd's curiosity, their whispers now tinged with doubt. Emily's live stream captured every moment, the comments section erupting with speculation. Why won't she just show ID? One viewer typed. Karen's going too far, another countered. The Garcia brothers muttered to each other, one shaking his head in disapproval, the other stifling a grin as the tension mounted. Mrs. Henderson clutched her novel tighter, her disapproval shifting from Aisha to Karen's increasingly shrill demeanor. The maintenance worker, still lingering near the equipment shed, twisted his rag nervously, his eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Aisha's gaze swept the crowd, her calm unbroken, as if she were addressing a boardroom rather than a mob. I'm happy to resolve this, she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a clear bell. But I'd like to understand the rule you're enforcing. If it's about safety, I'm all for it. Could you or James show me the exact bylaw? Her repetition of the request was deliberate, a quiet challenge that exposed the fragility of Karen's stance. The crowd leaned in, their attention split between Aisha's unwavering poise and Karen's faltering certainty. Karen's pen froze, her clipboard now a prop in a performance that was unraveling. This isn't about the fine print, she said, her voice rising to a near shout, her frustration boiling over. This is about respecting the community's standards. You're making people uncomfortable, sitting here like you own the place. The accusation was a raw nerve, laid bare for all to see, and the crowd's reaction was mixed, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting away as Aisha's calm gaze met theirs. Milo's growl became a sharp bark, his small body quivering with indignation. Aisha's hand steadied him, her touch a silent command, and he settled back, though his eyes remained locked on Karen. Uncomfortable, Aisha echoed, her voice soft but piercing, each word a needle threading through the tension. I'm sitting here, reading, enjoying the amenities I'm entitled to. If that's causing discomfort, perhaps we should discuss why. Her words were a quiet thunderclap, reverberating through the crowd, forcing some to look away, others to whisper with renewed intensity. James's hand twitched toward his walkie-talkie, his hesitation palpable. I can call for clarification, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes pleading for a way out of the escalating conflict. Karen's glare silenced him, her authority now a fragile facade. No calls, she snapped, her voice trembling with the effort to maintain control. She needs to leave, or we'll escalate this to security protocol. Her words were a final stand, a desperate attempt to assert dominance, but they hung in the air like a hollow threat. Aisha's smile widened slightly, a glimmer of resolve beneath her calm exterior. I'd prefer to resolve this calmly, she said, her voice a lifeline in the storm. Show me the rule, and we can clear this up. The crowd held its breath, its eyes locked on the standoff, the tension coiling tighter with every passing second. Karen's clipboard trembled, her pen still, as Aisha's quiet defiance held the scene together, a thread stretched to its breaking point. The air thrummed with a taut silence, the weight of accusation pressing down like an unseen fog. Aisha sat poised on her lounge chair, her hands folded with a serenity that seemed to defy the storm of scrutiny swirling around her. The crowd, a restless sea of onlookers, leaned in, their murmurs a low hum of anticipation, waiting for the next move in this tense chess match. Milo, Aisha's corgi, bristled at her feet, his ears pinned back, a soft growl rumbling as he sensed the hostility aimed at his owner. Karen's voice cut through the quiet, shrill with desperation, to reclaim her faltering authority. "This has gone on long enough," she declared, her tone a whip cracking through the charged atmosphere. "If you can't produce proof of residency right now, I'm calling for additional security to escort you out." Her clipboard jabbed forward, a final gesture of dominance, as if the sheer force of her will could bend Aisha to compliance. The crowd's whispers surged, some nodding in approval, others shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Karen's fervor and Aisha's unshakable calm. Aisha's smile remained steady, a beacon of composure in the face of Karen's onslaught. "I've offered to clarify my residency," she said, her voice smooth as polished stone, each word a deliberate counter to the rising tide of aggression. "If you could show me the specific bylaw you're enforcing, we could resolve this without escalating." Her tone was measured, almost conciliatory, but it carried a quiet strength that seemed to unsettle Karen further, like a breeze stirring embers into flame. Milo's growl deepened, his small frame quivering with indignation, his loyalty a silent force at Aisha's side. James fumbled with his tablet, his fingers swiping frantically, the screen's glow illuminating his anxious expression. "I'm trying to find it," he muttered, his voice barely audible, his cap slipping as he ducked his head. "It's in the portal somewhere. Amenities section, maybe." His words faltered, his confidence eroded by the absence of the rule he was tasked to uphold. Karen shot him a glare, her patience fraying like a worn thread. "Stop stalling," she snapped, her voice rising to a pitch that drew gasps from the crowd. "This woman is not on the list. She doesn't belong here." The accusation landed like a spark in dry grass, igniting a ripple of murmurs through the onlookers. Emily Davis, her phone raised like a spotlight, continued her live stream, the comments section erupting with hashtags like "Born Pool Intruder" and "Karen Strikes Again." "She's refusing to leave," Emily narrated, her voice tinged with theatrical outrage, her lens capturing every moment of the standoff. Mrs. Henderson clutched her romance novel tighter, her disapproval shifting from Aisha to Karen's increasingly unhinged demeanor. The Garcia brothers exchanged smirks, their towels draped over their shoulders as they whispered about the absurdity of the scene. Aisha leaned back slightly, her hands still folded, her gaze unwavering as it met Karen's. "I'm happy to cooperate," she said, her voice a clear note cutting through the chaos. "But I'd like to see the rule you're referencing. That's only fair." Her words were a mirror, reflecting Karen's authority in her, exposing its fragility. The crowd's murmurs softened, some nodding in reluctant agreement, others casting doubtful glances at Karen's trembling clipboard. Then in a moment that seemed to pause time, Milo sprang into action. With a sudden burst of energy, the corgi leaped from his spot at Aisha's feet, his stubby legs propelling him toward Karen. His teeth caught the hem of her tailored vest, and with a playful tug, he tore a jagged strip, revealing a garish tie-dye t-shirt beneath, emblazoned with a cartoon cat wielding a pizza slice. The crowd erupted in laughter, the sound rolling through the air like a wave breaking the tension. Karen stumbled back, her clipboard clattering to the tiles, her face flushing crimson as she clutched at the tattered fabric. "Oh my God!" Emily gasped, her phone wobbling as she zoomed in on the spectacle, the live stream comments exploding with laughing emojis and memes in the making. "Corgives Karen!" one viewer typed, the hashtag spreading like wildfire. The Garcia brothers doubled over, their laughter echoing, while Mrs. Henderson's stern expression cracked into a reluctant chuckle. Even the maintenance worker, still clutching his rag, snorted, his attempt at professionalism crumbling in the face of the absurd. Aisha's smile widened, a spark of amusement dancing in her eyes as she reached down to calm Milo, who pranced back to her side, his tail wagging triumphantly. "Milo, behave," she said softly, her voice laced with affection, though the twinkle in her gaze suggested she wasn't entirely displeased. She looked up at Karen, her composure unshaken. "I'm sorry about that," she said, her tone sincere but tinged with humor. "He gets protective. But I'd still like to see that bylaw." Her words were a gentle prod, redirecting the focus to the unresolved issue, even as the crowd's laughter lingered. Karen's hands shook as she scrambled to retrieve her clipboard, her authority now a tattered remnant, much like her vest. "This is unacceptable," she sputtered, her voice a mix of outrage and humiliation. "You can't just... Your dog can't just attack me." She pointed at Milo, who tilted his head innocently, his tongue lolling as if unaware of the chaos he'd caused. The crowd's laughter swelled again, a few residents pulling out their phones to snap photos, the moment already destined for viral infamy. James, caught between shock and embarrassment, stepped forward, his walkie-talkie crackling as he raised it to his mouth. I, uh, I can call the office," he said, his voice trembling, his eyes darting to Aisha for a fleeting moment, as if seeking her approval. "Maybe they can clarify the resident list." His offer was tentative, a lifeline thrown into the chaos, but Karen waved him off, her face a mask of defiance. "No calls," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "She needs to leave, or we'll file a formal complaint." Aisha's gaze swept the crowd, her calm a stark contrast to Karen's unraveling composure. "I'd prefer to resolve this calmly," she said, her voice a steady current beneath the storm of laughter and murmurs. "If there's been a mistake with the list, I'm sure we can sort it out. But I need to see the rule you're enforcing." Her repetition of the request was deliberate, a quiet challenge that hung in the air, unanswered. The crowd's attention shifted, some now murmuring in support of Aisha's reasonable stance, others still swayed by Karen's fading authority. Emily's live stream captured the moment, the comments now split between amusement at Milo's antics and growing curiosity about Aisha's calm insistence. "She's not backing down," one viewer wrote. "Karen's losing it," another added. The Garcia brothers stifled their laughter, one nudging the other as they whispered about the cartoon cat t-shirt. Mrs. Henderson shook her head, her novel now a forgotten prop as she watched the scene unfold. The maintenance worker, still clutching his rag, edged closer, his grin barely concealed. Karen's clipboard trembled as she clutched it to her chest, her voice rising to a near shout. "This is about respect for our community," she declared, her words a desperate attempt to rally the crowd. "We have standards, and they apply to everyone." But her voice cracked, undermined by the laughter still rippling through the onlookers, the image of her tie-dye t-shirt now etched in their minds. Aisha's smile softened, her eyes holding Karen's with a quiet resolve. "I respect community standards," she said, her voice a clear bell in the chaos. "That's why I'm asking for clarity. Show me the rule, and we can move forward." The crowd fell silent, their eyes locked on the standoff, the moment poised on the edge of something explosive, with Milo's playful intervention a fleeting spark of humor in the escalating tension. The air pulsed with a brittle stillness, the laughter sparked by Milo's antics fading into a charged hush. Aisha sat composed on her lounge chair, her hands folded with a quiet strength that anchored the swirling tension. The crowd, a restless tide of onlookers, pressed closer, their murmurs a low hum of curiosity and doubt. Their phones glowing with the live stream that had turned Karen's humiliation into a viral spectacle. Milo now settled at Aisha's feet, tilted his head, his ears alert, as if sensing the pivotal moment unfolding. Karen's voice, still raw from the laughter that had pierced her armor, rose in a desperate bid to reclaim control. "This is your last chance," she declared, her tone sharp with defiance, though it trembled at the edges. "Show proof of residency, or I'm calling for immediate removal." Her clipboard jabbed forward, a flimsy shield against the growing unease in the crowd, her words a final stand to assert dominance. The accusation hung heavy, a verdict delivered without evidence, and the onlookers' whispers surged, some nodding in lingering support, others casting skeptical glances at her faltering resolve. Aisha's smile remained steady, a beacon of calm in the storm of scrutiny. "I've offered to clarify my status," she said, her voice smooth as a polished river stone, each syllable a deliberate counter to Karen's mounting agitation. But you haven't shown me the rule you're enforcing. I'd like to resolve this fairly. Her words were a quiet challenge, turning Karen's demands back on her like a mirror reflecting a flaw. Milo huffed softly, his tail thumping once, his loyalty a silent force as the tension coiled tighter. James shifted uneasily, his walkie-talkie crackling as he raised it, his voice barely above a whisper. I can call management, he offered, his eyes darting to Aisha, as if seeking her approval to escape the escalating fray. Karen shot him a glare, her patience frayed to breaking. No calls, she snapped, her voice a whip cracking through the silence. She's wasting our time with this nonsense. Her words were a desperate grasp at authority, but they faltered against Aisha's unyielding composure, the crowd's murmurs now tinged with doubt. Emily Davis, her phone still raised, continued her live stream, the comments section erupting with hashtags like Warrior Corgiv's Karen and Pool Showdown. She's not backing down, Emily narrated, her voice a mix of awe and agitation, her lens capturing Aisha's serene defiance. Mrs. Henderson clutched her romance novel, her disapproval softening as she watched Karen's unraveling. The Garcia brothers whispered, their smirks fading into curiosity, their phones now out as they scrolled, searching for answers to the enigma before them. Aisha leaned forward slightly, her hands unfolding as she reached for her phone, her movements deliberate, like a conductor preparing to shift the tempo. Since we're at an impasse, she said, her voice clear and unwavering, let me make a call to clear this up. She dialed a number, her tone calm but commanding as she spoke. David, I need you to contact building management. There's a misunderstanding here that needs addressing. Her words were brief, but they landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the crowd, their whispers swelling with anticipation. Karen's eyes narrowed, her clipboard trembling as she scoffed. Who are you calling? She demanded, her voice laced with suspicion, as if Aisha's calm was a ruse to delay the inevitable. This isn't a game. You can't just call someone to bail you out. Her words were a challenge, but they lacked the conviction of her earlier demands, her authority now a shadow of itself. The crowd leaned in, their phones buzzing with notifications as Emily's live stream gained traction, comments flooding in. Who's she calling? Karen's in trouble now. Aisha set her phone down, her smile softening but unyielding. I'm calling someone who can confirm my residency, she said, her voice a steady current beneath the storm. I'd still like to see that bylaw, though. Her repetition of the request was a masterstroke, exposing Karen's inability to produce the rules she wielded so confidently. James fumbled with his tablet, his fingers frozen, his eyes darting to the crowd as if seeking an escape from the mounting pressure. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their curiosity now a palpable force. Mrs. Henderson lowered her novel, her lips parting in a silent question. The Garcia brothers scrolled faster, their whispers growing urgent as they exchanged glances. Emily's live stream comments exploded with speculation. Is she someone important? Karen's done for. The maintenance worker, his rag twisted in his hands, edged closer, his grin replaced by a look of intrigue. The air was electric, the standoff poised on a knife's edge, every eye fixed on Aisha's quiet resolve. Then a new figure emerged from the crowd's periphery. Richard Thompson, the building manager, his presence announced by the jingle of keys on his belt. His arrival silenced the murmurs, the crowd parting like a curtain as he approached. I got a call from David Lee, he said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. There's been a misunderstanding. He turned to Aisha, his tone respectful. You're a resident of Penthouse 28, correct? The question was a formality, but it landed like a thunderclap, shifting the dynamic in an instant. Karen's clipboard slipped slightly, her face paling as she stammered. Penthouse 28? Her voice was a whisper, her authority crumbling like dry sand. James lowered his tablet, his cap slipping as he stared at Aisha, realization dawning. The crowd's whispers erupted into gasps, phones raised higher as they began to search, fingers flying across screens. Aisha Johnson, someone muttered, the name spreading like wildfire as results flooded their devices. CEO of Medicor, Forbes 30 under 40, donor of $4 million for community amenities. Aisha's gaze met Richard's, her smile now carrying a hint of steel. That's correct, she said, her voice calm but resonant, each word a revelation that shifted the ground beneath Karen's feet. I funded the pool, the lighting system, the gardens, all of it. I chose every detail to make this a place for everyone. Her words were a quiet earthquake, shaking the crowd's assumptions, their phones buzzing with frantic searches as the truth unfolded. Emily's phone wobbled, her live stream capturing the stunned silence, comments now flooding with shock. She's the CEO? Karen messed with the wrong person. Mrs. Henderson's novel fell to her lap, her eyes wide with disbelief. The Garcia brothers froze, their phones glowing with articles about Aisha's achievements. The maintenance worker's jaw dropped, his rag forgotten as he stared at the woman he'd underestimated. Karen's clipboard clattered to the tiles, her hands trembling as she struggled to speak. I didn't know, she stammered, her voice barely audible, her authority reduced to ashes. James stepped back, his walkie-talkie silent, his eyes fixed on Aisha with a mix of awe and apology. Aisha's smile softened, her gaze sweeping the crowd, her composure a lighthouse in the storm of revelation. I just wanted to read my book, she said, her voice light but piercing. But I'm happy to clarify who I am. Milo's tail wagged, his earlier agitation replaced by a contented huff as he settled at Aisha's feet. The crowd stood frozen, their phones still glowing with the truth, the air thick with the weight of their misjudgment. Karen's face was a mask of shock, her clipboard forgotten, as Aisha's quiet power held the moment, a reckoning delivered with grace and precision. The air hung heavy with the aftershock of revelation, the silence so thick it seemed to pulse with the weight of shattered assumptions. Karen Williams stood frozen, her clipboard abandoned on the tiles, its pages fluttering like the remnants of her crumbled authority. James Carter clutched his tablet, his walkie-talkie silent, his eyes darting between Aisha's serene resolve and the crowd's stunned faces. The onlookers, a sea of murmurs and glowing phones, stood transfixed, their earlier judgments now a bitter taste in the wake of Aisha's unveiled identity. Milo, her corgi, lay content at her feet, his tail giving a lazy wag, as if the storm had passed and left only clarity in its wake. Karen's voice, when it finally emerged, was a fragile whisper, stripped of its earlier venom. I didn't mean to. I didn't know, she stammered, her hands trembling as she reached for the fallen clipboard, only to let it slip again. The crowd's murmurs swelled, a mix of shock and discomfort as phones buzzed with notifications from Emily Davis's live stream, now flooded with comments. She's the CEO? Karen's done. The weight of Aisha's truth, her role as Medicor's founder, the benefactor of the very amenities they cherished, hung like a verdict, exposing the fragility of their assumptions. Aisha's gaze softened, her smile a delicate balance of grace and steel. I understand mistakes happen, she said, her voice a clear stream cutting through the tension. But assumptions can cause harm. I only asked for clarity, not conflict. Her words were a lifeline, offered with a generosity that made the crowd shift uneasily, their earlier complicity now a mirror they couldn't ignore. Milo huffed softly, his head tilting as if in agreement, his small presence a quiet echo of Aisha's calm authority. Emily's phone wavered, her live stream capturing the moment as comments poured in, some apologizing, others mocking Karen's humiliation. I'm ending this, Emily muttered, her fingers fumbling to stop the broadcast. But the damage was done. Corgi vs. Karen trended across social platforms, the tie-dye cat t-shirt now a meme etched in digital infamy. Mrs. Henderson lowered her romance novel, her disapproval replaced by a flicker of shame, her eyes avoiding Aisha's steady gaze. The Garcia brothers pocketed their phones, their earlier smirks gone, replaced by a quiet respect as they whispered to each other, heads bowed. James stepped forward, his voice barely audible, his cap still askew. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said, his eyes fixed on Aisha, genuine regret threading through his words. I was just following orders. His admission was raw, a young man caught in a system he hadn't questioned until now. Aisha nodded, her smile warm but firm. "I appreciate that, James," she said, her tone gentle yet resolute. "But following orders doesn't mean ignoring what's right. You can always ask questions." Her words landed softly but carried weight, a lesson offered without malice. And James ducked his head, his tablet dimming as he absorbed the truth. Karen, her face pale, tried to rally, her voice quivering with a mix of defiance and desperation. "This was about protecting our community," she said, her words hollow against the crowd's shifting allegiance. "We have rules for a reason." But her defense faltered, drowned by the buzz of phones and the crowd's murmurs, now laced with skepticism. A notification pinged on someone's device, then another, as the group chat erupted with messages. "Karen's out of line," one resident typed. "We need to rethink the board," another added. The tide had turned, and Karen stood alone, her authority a fading echo. Aisha leaned back, her hands resting lightly on her lap, her composure a stark contrast to Karen's unraveling. "Rules matter," she said, her voice a steady beacon. "But they should serve everyone, not just a few. If a rule is unclear, we question it. That's how we build trust." Her words were a quiet manifesto, resonating with the crowd, some nodding in reluctant agreement, others staring at their phones, grappling with the weight of their earlier silence. Milo's tail thumped once, a small drumbeat of loyalty, as if endorsing her call for fairness. The crowd's phones buzzed relentlessly, the live stream's fallout spreading like wildfire. Comments evolved from mockery to reflection. "We judge too fast," one viewer wrote. "She's right about trust," another added. Emily, her face flushed, pocketed her phone, her earlier bravado replaced by a quiet panic as she realized the video had painted her as complicit. Mrs. Henderson set her novel aside, her hands trembling slightly, her earlier certainty now a shadow of doubt. The Garcia brothers exchanged a glance, one muttering, "We should have said something," his voice heavy with regret. Richard Thompson, the building manager, lingered at the edge, his keys jingling as he watched the scene unfold. "I've confirmed her residency," he said, his voice steady but tinged with apology as he addressed the crowd. "There's no issue here. Let's all move on." His words were meant to diffuse, but they only amplified the crowd's unease, their phones glowing with articles about Aisha's achievements, her leadership at Medicor, her philanthropy, her place on prestigious lists. The truth was undeniable, a reckoning that forced them to confront their biases. Aisha's gaze swept the crowd, her smile softening as she spoke. "I don't want anyone punished," she said, her voice a clear note in the chaos. "I just want us to do better, to listen before we judge." Her words were a call to action, delivered with a grace that made the crowd's silence feel heavier, their complicity laid bare. James nodded, his eyes downcast, his tablet now a forgotten prop. Karen's hands shook, her clipboard a useless relic as she struggled to respond, her voice lost in the tide of notifications flooding the group chat. The crowd began to shift, some stepping back, others whispering apologies under their breath. Phones buzzed with new messages. "We need to apologize," one resident typed. "This is on us," another added. The Garcia brothers approached Aisha hesitantly, one offering a quiet, "Sorry for not speaking up." Mrs. Henderson clutched her novel, her eyes glistening with unspoken regret. Emily's fingers hovered over her phone, debating whether to post a retraction, her earlier confidence now a distant memory. Aisha's smile held steady, her hands unfolding as she reached for her book, a silent signal that she was ready to move on. "Thank you for hearing me out," she said, her voice warm but firm, a bridge offered to those willing to cross it. Milo yawned, his small form relaxing as the tension eased, his loyalty a quiet anchor at her side. The crowd's murmurs softened, their phones still glowing, but now with a different purpose, reflection rather than judgment. Karen stood rooted, her clipboard forgotten, her face a mask of shock and shame. "I was just doing my job," she whispered, but her words were swallowed by the crowd's shifting focus, their attention now on Aisha's quiet power. The group chat buzzed with calls for a meeting, for change, for accountability. The air, once thick with accusation, now carried a fragile hope, a chance to rebuild what had been broken by haste and prejudice. Aisha opened her book, her fingers brushing the page with care. Her presence a testament to resilience. The crowd lingered, their silence a canvas for reflection, their phones a mirror of their missteps. Milo settled at her feet, his tail still, as if sensing the moment's weight. The standoff had ended, not with a shout but with a whisper, a call to question, to listen, to grow. The air shimmered with a fragile calm, the echoes of confrontation fading into a reflective silence that wrapped the poolside like a gentle tide. Karen's voice when it emerged was a broken whisper, stripped of its earlier fire. "I was only trying to uphold the rules," she said, her words faltering, a plea for understanding that fell flat against the weight of her actions. The crowd's murmurs softened, their earlier complicity now a heavy burden, their phones glowing with notifications from the group chat. "We need to do better," one message read. "This was a wake-up call," another declared. Aisha's revelation, her role as Medicor's CEO, the benefactor of the very amenities they cherished, had shifted the ground beneath them, leaving a legacy of questions in its wake. Isha's gaze lifted, her smile a delicate blend of grace and resolve. "Rules are important," she said, her voice clear as a bell, cutting through the hush with gentle authority. "But they should lift everyone, not push anyone out." Today was a chance to learn that. Her words were a quiet call to action, delivered with a generosity that made the crowd pause, their phones lowering as they absorbed the truth. Milo huffed softly, his head tilting as if in agreement, his small presence a steady echo of her calm strength. Emily Davis, her phone now tucked away, stood frozen, her earlier bravado replaced by a quiet shame. The live stream she'd broadcast, once a weapon of judgment, had become a mirror reflecting her haste. Comments still poured in, but they had shifted. "We owe her an apology," one viewer wrote. "She's the one who made this place possible," another added. Emily's fingers hovered over her screen, a draft apology forming, but she hesitated, the weight of her actions sinking in. The Garcia brothers exchanged a glance, one muttering, "We should have stepped in," his voice thick with regret. Mrs. Henderson set her novel aside, her hands trembling as she whispered to herself, grappling with her silence during the confrontation. James approached Aisha, his cap clutched in his hands, his voice low but earnest. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said, his eyes meeting hers briefly before dropping to the tiles. I didn't know." His admission was raw, a young man confronting the limits of blind obedience. Isha nodded, her smile warm but firm. "You can always ask questions, James," she said, her tone a gentle lesson. "That's how we grow." Her words settled over him like a balm, and he stepped back, his shoulders easing as he absorbed the wisdom offered without judgment. The crowd's phones buzzed relentlessly, the group chat now a flurry of accountability. "Karen's stepping down," one message announced, followed by others. "We need new leadership. Let's review the bylaws." The tide had turned, not with shouts but with whispers, a collective awakening sparked by Aisha's quiet defiance. Karen, her face pale, bent to retrieve her clipboard, her movements slow, as if carrying the weight of her missteps. She avoided Aisha's gaze, her earlier certainty now a distant memory, her role in the community forever altered. Aisha leaned back, her fingers brushing the pages of her book, her presence a testament to resilience. "I don't want this to divide us," she said, her voice a steady beacon in the shifting air. "I want it to bring us together, to make us think about who we welcome and why." Her words were a bridge, offered to a crowd now grappling with their biases, their phones glowing with pledges to change. The Garcia brothers nodded, one typing a message in the group chat. "She's right. Let's fix this." Mrs. Henderson wiped a tear, her novel forgotten as she whispered an apology to no one in particular. Richard Thompson, the building manager, stepped forward, his keys jingling softly. "This was a mistake," he said, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "We'll ensure it doesn't happen again." His promise was a start, but Aisha's gaze held a quiet challenge, urging more than words. "It's not just about promises," she said, her voice soft but piercing. "It's about actions, listening, questioning, including." Her words resonated, a call to build a community rooted in fairness, and the crowd nodded, some typing furiously, others whispering plans for a meeting to rewrite the rules. The phones buzzed with a new rhythm, messages of reflection replacing earlier accusations. "We need to apologize to her," one resident wrote. "This is on all of us," another added. Emily, her face flushed, finally posted a retraction. "I was wrong to judge. Let's learn from this." The comments section softened, filled with support for Aisha's call to unity. The Garcia brothers approached her, one offering a quiet, "Thank you for speaking up." Mrs. Henderson stood, her novel tucked under her arm, and nodded to Aisha, a silent acknowledgement of her misstep. Karen lingered at the edge, her clipboard a useless relic, her voice silenced by the weight of the moment. The group chat buzzed with calls for her resignation, but Aisha raised a hand, her gesture calming the crowd. "This isn't about blame," she said, her voice a clear note in the chaos. "It's about moving forward. Let's make this a place where everyone belongs." Her words were a vision, a legacy taking root in the hearts of those who listened, their phones now tools for change rather than judgment. Aisha opened her book, her fingers finding the page with a gentle touch, a signal that she was ready to return to her piece. Milo yawned, his small form curling closer, his loyalty a quiet anchor. The crowd began to disperse, their steps hesitant, their phones still buzzing with reform plans. James pocketed his tablet, his eyes lingering on Aisha with newfound respect. Karen stood alone, her clipboard untouched, her silence a testament to the lesson learned. The air cleared, the tension dissolving into a fragile hope. Aisha's words echoed in the crowd's minds, a call to question, to listen, to build. The phones, once weapons of haste, now carried pledges to do better, to rewrite the rules, to honor the truth. Aisha's legacy was not in her title or her contributions, but in the spark she ignited, a chance for a community to redefine itself. As she turned the page, the moment closed, not with a shout but with a whisper, a promise of change written in the hearts of those who had witnessed her stand. The saga at the poolside, where Aisha's quiet strength unraveled prejudice, leaves us with a powerful lesson. Courage and clarity can reshape communities. Her story challenges us to question assumptions and champion inclusion. What did Aisha's stand spark in you? How can we ensure everyone feels they belong? Share your thoughts. Your voice matters in building a better tomorrow. Thank you for joining this journey through a tale of resilience and reflection. Your engagement brings these moments to life, reminding us that change begins with listening. Until we meet again, let's carry Aisha's call to action forward, fostering spaces where dignity is the default. Stay inspired and see you soon for another story that stirs the heart and mind.